the CCC. I'm going down, I'm going down.
We realized that there were a lot of stories out there that no one's really telling. They're the missed stories, the ones that are buried deep in history.
I know that the WPA won't do a thing for me.
The work that the CCC did in the 1930s and 40s is a big part of how we use and interact with the forest today. It was a government program that was created by Franklin Roosevelt when he took office just after the Great Depression started to grip the United States. And Roosevelt decided that if private industry was unwilling or unable to hire people and put them to work, that the federal government would do so.
I know that the WPA won't do a thing for me.
First, we are giving opportunity of employment to 250,000 of the unemployed, especially the young men who have dependents, to let them go into forestry and flood prevention work. That is a big task because it means feeding and clothing and caring for nearly twice as many men as we have in the regular army itself. And in creating this Civilian Conservation Corps, we are killing two birds with one stone. We are clearly enhancing the value of our natural resources, and at the same time, we are relieving an appreciable amount of actual distress.
I told her I needed a job and no relief. On my rent day, she sent me a can of beef.
After inspecting Skyland, the Commander-in-Chief takes a seat at the head of the table to eat with the boys, and he enjoys every bite of the plain, wholesome food furnished at the camp.
It's very good to be here at these CCC camps. I wish I could see them all over the country. I wish that I could take a couple of months off from the White House and come down here and live with them, because I know I'd get full of health the way they have. The only difference is that they put on an average of about 12 pounds apiece since they got here, and I'm trying to take off 12 pounds.
I'm going down to the CCC. I know that the WPA won't do a thing for me.
Here today we have our crews from the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps crew and IUP Dirt, and they are helping us to clean out one of the Civilian Conservation Corps' African American camps. A lot of the work that we have set out for us is to identify, delineate, and evaluate these resources. And sometimes that means uncovering the vegetation that you see here on site. Other times that means identifying on the map. Other things that you'll see us do in the forest, we'll start to map this out, and then we will evaluate how this sits in the landscape at a broader scale. So across the state, across the nation, what these resources mean to those folks.
Today we are out in the Susquehannock Forest, our journey as the Lumber Heritage Region to uncover our roots. This is our second introduction to the CCC camps, the segregated CCC camps that we had in the state. The first project we did as we were uncovering our roots for a segregated CCC camp was in Clinton County. It was Company 1330, Camp S76. The remains were done by the Eagle Scouts. He did a project where he did what we're doing here today, uncovered the remains, and then they were labeled and marked, and it's now like a little walking trail. So you can go up to the Sproul State Forest and walk that trail. So it's a good way to enter the Lumber Heritage Region and realize that a lot of people made things happen in our region.
My name is Joshua Roth, and I am the site administrator of the Pennsylvania Lumber Museum, located in Potter County, Pennsylvania. And we are here today at the former location of the Shanty CCC camp to do some archaeological reconnaissance with the overall goal of increasing public awareness and interpretation of the history surrounding this site.
And wastewater disposal tests, that could be there's more up the hill because when we were looking.
Initially, you had to be a young man, unmarried, between the ages of 18 and 25. The idea was that you couldn't find work elsewhere, so the government would give you a job doing a variety of different things to help preserve, protect, and restore the natural landscape of the United States. Company of Civilian Conservation Corps enrollees that occupied this camp were African American enrollees. The CCC program, as it was created in 1933, was segregated. So Caucasian enrollees did not intermingle with African American or Native American or Hispanic American enrollees. They were each put into their own separate camps and companies. And this was one of the about 20 to 30 different African American camps that were established across Pennsylvania during the 9-year tenure of the program. Here we have lots of structural features that are left over: concrete foundations, stairs, walkways, terraces, roads, a lot of preservation that we're just not seeing at this level in different CCC camps in Pennsylvania, which is another reason why it's great that the work that's happening here is happening, because I think there's a lot that can be learned from this camp based on the level of preservation we're seeing.
We were able to obtain about 70 pages of inspection reports from the camp from the National Archives, and we have the annual inspection reports from 1936 through 1941. And a lot of what we know about the camp comes from those inspection reports. We know the camp was founded in July of 1935. At the time, the Army was segregated, and so was the CCC. And most of the enrollees that spent time at this camp were drawn from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. The number of enrollees varied from just over 100 to just under 200 enrollees at a time. The enrollees were assigned various work duties and responsibilities. We know from the inspection reports that the enrollees at this camp spent a lot of time basically in the woods. They did a lot of trail work, they built roads, they did blight control for white pine trees, they fought forest fires. The nearest town for the enrollees was Counterport, Pennsylvania. And they were taken into Counterport for recreation on a regular basis. We also know from the inspection reports that education was a vital part of what they did while they were located here. They taught a number of things: reading, writing, arithmetic, and basic skills. They also taught auto mechanics, a lot of forestry-related topics. Classes were held 5 evenings a week, plus Saturdays. This group is working on what we speculate was a generator station. We know from the inspection reports that they had a 50 kilowatt DC generator that provided electricity.
So
You're finding some coal also?
probably use fire the generator.
Yeah. And so they had a 50 kilowatt DC generator to provide electricity to the camp, and perhaps this is where it was located. The inspection reports also refer to a driven well as the water source for the camp. It also mentioned that they had 2 1,500-gallon storage tanks that were pressurized that provided water supply to the camp. Perhaps this is where the well was located. We have a well casing over here and some galvanized piping that pops up all over the campsite. We see the same 2-inch galvanized coming up out of the ground. So speculating that this was the water source for the camp.
What we're trying to do here is really to uncover those stories for folks to build that sense of stewardship, and not only ourselves as an agency, but for Pennsylvania's people so that they understand what we have, the public heritage that's laying right underfoot, and making sure that as we build out this kind of work, that it doesn't stop with us, that the folks that are doing it, like the young folks behind me, are the next generation of stewards in the forest.
So what we're doing here, this is indeed an outdoor core cultural resource crew project. In addition to the IUP, I also provide field support to the cultural resource crew. We'll be taking photos once everything's clean to get a record of the current state of things. I'm taking points on the corners of each structure once they're cleared to see the layout of things compared to records that we do have and also existing aerial photography.
Part of what we're doing here is just to uncover what is known here to see if we can find some idea of what's exactly here, names to certain buildings, to get a layout of what's here to potentially do more work and get more research, because CCC camps isn't heavily studied, so we're trying to see if we can find exactly where they are and get a layout so we can use this as blueprints to take across different sites to maybe help get ones that are in worse conditions.
We are tasked with going to various state parks and state forests all around Pennsylvania and doing any cultural resources needs. We are tasked with clearing off and getting an idea of where the CCC camp was, what buildings are which, and what they were used for, and doing our best to kind of set us up for future projects when we come out here and get further information. We've done various surveys, metal detecting, above ground surveys. We've done similar CCC camps, a lot of which are segregated CCC camps as well. We did one in Pymatuning State Park. We've also been working on one in Penn Roosevelt State Park.
The reason I'm here too is that my thesis site will be a 19th century African-American farmstead. So I'm very interested in all things African-American because I feel as though we need to tell their story and that it's something that should be brought to the forefront. Their story wasn't really told and their voice was drowned out for the most part. So we should be able to put their information out and give them a chance to have their story known.
One of the primary objectives to this kind of work is to really raise awareness of the types of sites that we have in our forests. And it's also to help us to better manage these resources for all people. One of the biggest things we want to do here is to make sure that it's accessible and uncovering the remains of these types of sites and making them more accessible to recreational users and the folks that come to Pennsylvania's forests to recreate.